So today, imagine the possibilities. So one of the things I like to start with is, what makes life meaningful for us as people?
Friends, family.
Family, right? So we have engagement in the community, family and friends, always very, very important, right? The other thing that we found is a happy home. Having something that feels like a sanctuary and a place that you can go and you can feel, you can let your hair down and relax and at the end of the day. So that's really, really important. And of course, health and well-being. Feeling healthy, having endurance and being able to do the things you want to do and being physically fit to do that. But another thing is choices and options, which we don't always think about. And oftentimes people with disabilities aren't really given choices. They're told you can have this or this, but they're never really given informed choice. They're never really given the ability to, do I like this or not like this? And then it's a choice. So what we have to do is really look at giving people not just choices and options, but options and choices that they're choosing. And really looking at how can we do that in an informed way and have them test the waters, try this, what do you think? And it shouldn't be, you can either do this or this. And oftentimes, unfortunately, that's the way our system is set up. You can have, you can go to this program and you can either do this, you can work here or do this. And for many people, that just doesn't work. And it's not a real choice. It's not. It's given to you. It's something that that you didn't choose yourself. So one of the things I want to look at today is how do we flip that on its head, and how do we make sure that we're giving people the opportunity to really do something and try something so that they can say, this is really fun. I really like this, or this isn't for me. So that we can start giving them informed choice and we can start figuring out who they are. And oftentimes you'll hear that described as discovery. So really looking at, discovering who that person is and what their interests are. The other thing that we see is that people really like freedom and independence. And I think it's really important that we all agree to that, especially young adults. They want to be seen as adults. They want to be seen as their own person and beyond their own as much as they can possibly be. And giving them even just small things and the freedom to choose what they wear, or to choose when they do something instead of always dictating and saying you're going to do this and you're going to do this and if we can just give them small little opportunities to kind of to play that role and to make decisions on their own, it really does play into someone's well-being. The other thing that really makes life meaningful is being productive and being valued and respected. And what we find is having a purpose. And that is the dignity that comes from having employment and being able to say, I'm a helper instead of I'm being helped. People rely on me, and the dignity and self-worth that comes with that can't be understated. So employment is such an important piece of our well-being and something that makes life meaningful, and it's not just a paycheck. So I think it's something that we have to really inspire or aspire to, and try and make sure that it happens for everyone. And we're getting pretty good at it. We're starting to really understand how to do this. We're really starting to understand how to get to know people. We're really starting how to understand how to put those pieces together and really find employment that matches a person and fits like a glove. So we don't have to get people jobs bagging groceries at Safeway. That, I say that it is admirable work, and if it's something you choose to do, that's wonderful. But if it's not for you, then it shouldn't be something that you end up bagging groceries at Safeway for 30 years. And we've had people. We had one young man who came to us who in high school was placed at a Safeway bagging groceries, and he had autism. and he was working in the morning at the Safeway, and it was when I don't say this derogatorily, but it was when the seniors shopped, and they were very particular about how their groceries went in the bag, and he was always getting it wrong. And it was very anxiety provoking for him, because they would like, oh, you're making them too heavy. Don't do that, young man. You got to do this. You got to do that. Put those, all the frozen stuff goes, and they were constantly kind of correcting him, and it was really starting to eat on him, and he was anxious, and finally it just broke down, and said, I can't do this. I can't work, and he ended up hospitalized. And his mother, was just completely distraught. And when we got him at WorkLink, she said, don't mention the W word. Don't talk about work. And I was like, oh okay. The name of the program is called WorkLink, right? And she's like, just don't talk about work. And I said, okay, but we will bring him around. We're going to put him into a volunteer job. We're going to teach him that he can be a helper. He can do, and we'll just start out baby steps, very slowly, build his confidence back, and see where we can get. And she was like, okay, please, and let's just have him go out with his friends. Let's just have, just be delicate. So we went very slowly. We got him kind of built his confidence back up, and we started talking to him about
having a career.
And Safeway is a good job for some people, but not a good job for you. And we started giving him that voice, and he started owning that, and started saying, that wasn't a good job for me. And he started saying, there's a job out there for me. And then we could start kind of looking at what would that job be. And so we started looking with him, and we put him into our Project Search program, and had him go through some internships, and we said, we're going to be asking you every moment, do you like this or do you not? And we want you to be honest with us. We want you to say yes or no. And there's no right or wrong answer, and giving him a voice, and actually giving him the opportunity to say, this is fun, I don't really like this. And he really took to that, and he started really exploring and really telling us. And then we started working on skill sets, and what do you love to do? He likes using a computer. So we started, he didn't type very well. So we started, where do you learn to type? Let's get you in a city college class, and you can learn keyboarding skills. And he started building those skills. And he went from 10 words a minute to, I think he's up to 60 now. Wow. He's amazing. And he learned how to file. He learned how to do all of these things. He's now working full time. And in a job that he loves, with coworkers he really likes. So
what is the job then that he's doing?
He works at this place called Veritas Investments, and it's a beautiful office downtown. He's a yuppie.
Is he office manager though?
He is an administrative assistant, and they are a leasing and rental company and management company for a slew of apartments, and he's doing bank deposits.
For me to picture what it is. Okay, that's.
And he's also in charge of putting. They have all sorts of. He sends out the cease and or the letters for if non-payment of rent.
Oh, okay.
Starting the process to kick somebody through the eviction process.
Right.
So. Okay. And the other thing, so little clerical things. He's also in charge of putting paper in the copiers. He also tends to the kitchens areas. He's also doing inventory for office supplies and snacks. That's a big thing in San Francisco. Everyone has snacks.
We have them here, so.
Yeah. So he's in charge of that. So he's in charge of counting the paper and saying, when it's time to reorder, and we have to go through and kind of structure and organize it. But he does it all by himself now, and he's intricate in the environment. And he actually was awarded the what do they call it? His coworkers voted him cultural competence or cultural something. Cultural. I want to say competence, but it's an annual award that they give out that you represent the principles of the company. And so he was awarded that and got a $500 bonus. So, yeah, so he was quite proud of himself. And they announced it at the company Christmas party, and I had never heard people scream louder. I mean, it was just the whole place erupted. So yeah, no. So he's well loved. He feels that, and he's got this wonderful paying job. He's looking for an apartment, believe it or not, in San Francisco, and he's saving to take a trip to Disneyland. Or maybe Vegas, he's not sure which. So yeah, so you can see how employment really does help people to have a meaningful life and to really establish that independence and that sense of adulthood. So it's really an important piece. So this is Alan. He's a patient transporter at Kaiser Permanente. He's making $22.86 an hour. He's working, I think, 32 hours a week. And he's taking care of his family. He's the breadwinner. And his parents came to us and they said, we always thought we were going to be the ones taking care of Alan, and now he's the one that's taking care of us. So you can shoot high. This is Carla. She works 16 hours a week at Buy Right Market, which is this kind of hipster, expensive grocery store / catering company. And she's in charge of, she's a produce assistant, so she's bagging and tagging spinach and arugula, and of course kale. We like our kale. So she's doing that. This is Yvonne. He's a what they refer to as a housekeeper, but he's also a scorekeeper at Marquette University in Milwaukee. He's a big sports fanatic. So when they started talking to him about Laura talked about him. Yeah, so they were talking about, what about you? What about you? Tell us about Yvonne. And his brothers said he is the biggest basketball fan. The only thing he likes to do is watch the Bucks, and except when the Packers are on, then he'll watch the Packers. So he's a big sports fanatic. So the job that they found for him was totally customized. It didn't exist. And they went to Marquette University and to the man who was in charge of. They have 5 different sports complexes on Marquette University, 5 different gyms. And in the winter, when it snows and mud and rocks get in there, the floor gets removed. So one of the brothers went to school there and said, they're just muddy. When I play basketball, it's just really muddy. There's rocks all over them. They are constantly having to refinish these floors. If we go in and pitch this as, we can, and his brother was an engineer, or was in engineering school, so he was like, I can rig up something. We were like, tell us more. And he said, I'll rig this up. And so this was his brother's idea. And then the service provider went in and talked to Marquette University and made it make economical sense. If you hire this young man to work, he's going to clean 5 different, well, actually it's 10. There's 2 courts in each rec center, and he'll clean them all and get the dirt and the rocks off the courts, so you don't have to refinish these floors, and you'll save money. And the guy said, oh my God, we can never keep up with this, and this is a big need for us. So they hired him to do that. And then the other need that the manager said, we constantly, he said, we have intramurals on Saturday, and these kids, these work-study kids, are completely unreliable. They don't show up because they go out on Friday night, they drink too much beer, and they don't get up and come to work on Saturday mornings. And he said, so we're constantly looking for scorekeepers. Do you think Yvonne would want to do that? And of course we asked him, and he was just over the moon that he was going to have an opportunity to be a scorekeeper. So that's what he does. So he's a scorekeeper on Saturdays for the intramural games, and then he works 3 days a week taking care of the 5 rec centers. And that's it's wonderful. And he's part of the complex. And then he gets to go boss people around too. He gets to go in and say, get off the court, I gotta clean this, and they've got to leave.
In terms of setting all that up, about how long does it take?
It really depends. It really depends. It depends on, we're working with Kaiser Permanente to create a similar position for a young man, and he uses a Dynavox and an electric wheelchair. And we are trying to get him a position within sterile processing, delivering trays. They have plastic trays of sterile instruments throughout a medical office building. It's not the hospital, because those are huge. There's a lot of, the job is much bigger. But in the medical office buildings, it's very small. It's stethoscopes, it's, very, like for procedures and things like that, and just some really small equipment. And the trays are small, they're lighter. And so we're talking with them, and there's a whole union involved, there's, Kaiser Permanente involved. So it really depends on what the job is. It also depends on what the individual brings. So it's not something that you can say it takes this long. It really depends on, what the person's going for, and also, and how much they know about themselves too, because much of this is just getting to know someone. And Yvonne was easy. It was blatant, what his interests were and what his passions were. And in some people, they're much more quiet, or they don't know. Their life experiences are minimal, and they don't really have an idea about what they like. So we have to start where the person is and build forward. So it looks different for everybody. And some people, we refer to these as the slam dunks. Like, we'll go out and, like, one young man was very interested in working in a health club, and but he also he was very gregarious, very outgoing, and wanted to, wanted a job where he had contact with people too. So we were like, okay, so that's not just any health club. So we went into Equinox, which is this exceedingly ritzy, expensive club. He also was really, really excited about sports. And we went to this club in particular because it's connected with the Four Seasons Hotel, and it's the one where the sports clubs stay. So when the Cavaliers come to play the Warriors, the Cavaliers stay at the Four Seasons, and they use this gym. And any baseball team that comes to play the Giants stays at the Four Seasons, and they use this gym to warm up. And we would see the buses outside, and we were like, that's the Cavaliers, and he was always really excited. So he'd go out and heckle these teams outside and tell them they were going to lose and all sorts of things. So we were like, they're staying at the hotel, and then somebody said, yeah, they use the Equinox gym, and we were like, that's the gym he needs to work at. That is the gym he needs to work at, and he has to promise not to heckle them inside with his uniform on. So we said to him, you have to maintain that professionalism. You can't go in there and, which all went really, really well. And so he ended up getting the job, and so he's the towel man. Dr. Towel, he calls himself, and he distributes towels, and they have eucalyptus towels and all sorts of towels, and so he's got like 15 different towels that go all over. So that's his job, and he also took care of the yoga mats that they sterilize. And of course, the Cavaliers show up to play the Warriors for the playoffs, and LeBron James is stretching in the gym, and he's delivering his towels, and he sees him, and he's like, so the manager, I went in about a day later, and she said, you're Jeff's job coach, right? I'm like, yeah. And she said, can I talk to you? And I was like, oh, no. And she said, I was showing someone around. I was showing a prospective member, a new member around. And of course, I'm taking them around and showing them all of the amenities of the club. And she said, and of course, the Cavaliers were kind of working out. So she said, I kind of spun through there just to kind of, and here's this, and there's that's LeBron James. And she was just kind of, showing the club off a little bit. And doesn't Jeff walk through with this cart? And she goes, and I see him, see LeBron, and he does this kind of U-turn and goes by him, and he leans down and he says something to LeBron James and stands up and goes on, and the three guys that were around him, the other players that were around him just cracked up and started punching him, and they were all laughing. And so she said, I was like, and then she said, I saw them all laughing, so I was kind of like, okay, I guess that's no foul there, I guess they're laughing about it. And so she went up to him and said, that's against protocol, we don't go up to the special guests at all. We'll give them their space. They're getting their head in the game. You can't do this. And so he's like, okay, yeah. And then she said, but what did you say? And he said, well, I told him not to be such a bog and that he needed to pass more.
That's good.
Exactly. So we were all just like, and she was laughing about it, thank God, and I was like, and I of course was like, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jeff. Anyway, and this is Julio. He is another one, and again, the jobs also depend on the industries and the jobs available in your area and what people do for a living here in Arizona. And of course, in San Francisco, we don't have manufacturing. Nobody builds anything in that city except software. So it's a lot of administrative headquarters, administrative offices and things like that. So many of our jobs are in office settings or such. But I think one of the things that we really need to look at is kind of what motivates us to work, and why do we go to work, and what's the purpose of work? And again, we forget about those things beyond the paycheck. It's that money and that ability to say, I work for Veritas, I work for Equinox, I work for IDEO, I work for Kaiser Permanente, and the pride that kind of comes with that. And that ability to make friends and to have colleagues and to have that camaraderie is another aspect of it that can't be denied. And then to learn something new and to be challenged and to really feel like you're growing is something that's really important. And to be helpful and productive is another reason. And then we also hear people, if we do our job right as providers, we hear people like, this is really fun. I really like doing this and I'm really good at it. And that's what we hope to find, is a job that it's gonna fit like a glove and that the person's gonna be really good at. And the last two are, I'm here because I'm bored. Or mom and dad said I have to go to work. When we get people that bring that to the table, and it happens once in a while, we know full well we have to do our job to find something that's going to motivate them, because they're not that interested in the idea. So we have to get something that's going to really rock their world, like, the Cavaliers come here and you could work here, and things like that. We had one young woman who she loved shopping, and she wasn't that interested in work, but she loved shopping. So we were like, what's your favorite store? Marshall's. It's Marshall's. So we're like, what about working at Marshall's? She's like, like they had no idea that people actually work there. That I think she just thought that it was there for her benefit. So we ended up getting her this job at Marshall's, and her boss called in July one year, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. GB is just crying. I can't understand what's going on. I can't get it out of her. Can you help me? And I said, well, put her on the phone and let me see if I can figure it out. And GB got on the phone, and I'm like, what? What's just sobbing. And I said, well, what's going on? And she said, no work. And I said, what do you mean, no work? 4th of July holiday, no work. And I'm like, what? And she said, holiday, Monday's holiday, no work on Monday. And she was crying because there was no work on Monday. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, calm down, and can I talk to Mike again? So she gets Mike back up, Mike gets on the phone, I'm like, she's crying because it's a holiday on Monday, and she's not coming to work. And there was this dead silence, and her boss said, well, she's the only one. and immediately in his eyes, she was just elevated onto this level, because he saw what working at Marshall's meant to her, and it was something that and she was someone who was not very interested, but then 2 months later was crying because she couldn't go in on Monday. Again, I say these are wonderful vignettes, and people are still, some people are like, yeah, do I believe her? And unfortunately, there is a very low rate of placement, and we are trying to change that. We are doing everything we can on the state and federal level to really kind of ramp up the supports and the services that people need, and to make sure that all of our services are working together in a collaborative way to make it easier on families, to make it easier on individuals, to really piece together the services that they need so that people can go to work. And we're finding that it's going, but it's still not seamless, and it's still not completely easy. So it does take a bit of a commitment on families' parts and to really and individuals to really kind of fight through this and make sure that you are advocating for the services that your son or daughter needs. And of course, with integrated employment, community employment, there's lots of fear. There's lots of question. How will they be treated? I don't know what my son or daughter can do. I know they can't work a 40-hour week. But what we need to do is we need to bring that to the table, and you need to say, these are my concerns, and how can we support my son or daughter, or where do we start in making this happen? So when we talk to families, one of the things that we've seen is many of them opt out. They're like, it's just, I have to work, I can't manage my job and my son or daughter's job as well. What if their hours change, if they get a schedule that's gonna go all over the place? I mean, I had one mother say, I have this house of cards built. And she said, you don't understand, do not touch this house of cards, because if it just goes down, I'm in big trouble. And that's where we come in. That's where service providers come in, and we said to her, this is a partnership. We will do everything we can to support you and your family so that your son or daughter can work. So we have to look at the many concerns and questions that families have, and these are some of them. So the system is incredibly confusing. I think we can all agree on that, and the acronyms that fly, and the processes and procedures, and you have to talk to VR, and who's VR, and well, you have to be eligible for long-term support. And that's through the division. Who's this? How do I? And it's just really overwhelming, and especially when you're graduating from school, where the school has kind of enveloped, it created a little buffer around you and told you for 22 years how this goes and what's going to happen, and then suddenly you're cast into the adult service system and nobody tells you anything, and you're left to kind of figure it out or find it on your own, and it can be really daunting for families. So we try to make it as difficult as possible.
You're doing a great job.
That's our job, to make this as hard as we possibly can and to confuse the hell out of everyone. No, but it's true. It can be very, very difficult for families to get their head around this system. And it's unfortunate, because the unfortunate part is that the funding and the departments were started for all different reasons, and they've all been around for a long, long time, and they never talk to each other. So it's this whole kind of cumbersome catastrophe that we have to kind of make sense, and we have to kind of pull together. And the unifying person is probably the service provider and your service coordinator, because they are the ones you can go to with questions. They are the ones that are there to support you. They are the ones that help you navigate. The coordinators help you navigate through. And hopefully, if you get a good provider, they won't bore you with the funding. You won't even know what the funding is, and they won't tell you, oh, well, this is that, and this is this, and you have to, and it'll make it a lot easier that you can just go on with your life and not have to learn about that silly system. So the system is confusing, it's cumbersome, people don't know where to start, I don't know who I need to talk to, I talked to that person, it never went anywhere. There's this whole dilemma of how to make this go. On top of that, a job will be too difficult for me to manage. I have my own life. I need to financially. I have to work. We hear that from families, and this will be too hard to manage. The other thing we hear is my son or daughter can't work for 40 hours, or even 20. Some people say, and what will they do the rest of the week? They'll just sit home, and I don't want that either. That's isolating. That's not what we want either. The other thing that we hear is, will he or she be respected? Will they be safe? It's a big concern. And what we found is, if we can find a place where they sparkle and where we've had employers kind of come to us and say, this, John, he's one of us. And when I hear an employer say that, I know that we put them in the right spot, and they take them and embrace them. And that's what we want. So creating a job that's not just a job, but where they're going to sparkle and where they're going to be really passionate to be, where they're going to cry when it's the 4th of July. That's what we want. Because then what happens is that they're loved. They're beloved by the whole, they're valued. They're playing a valued role. People really see the benefit of having them there, and they just, what we see is they really embrace them.
I just have to say that whenever you use the word sparkle, I just think that is so cool because it's not a term that's often associated with these conversations. So
Right.
It's a different word, That
Right.
and braided, those two things in our initial conversations we had, and you use those words, this woman is good.
Yeah, no,
You talk about reframing, and it's just different language.
It is, and we have to get away from that vernacular of disability and stop seeing people as disabled or broken or aberrant or whatever, and really start looking at what do they bring to the table and what are their passions and their interests, and it's really, like I said, it's really difficult to kind of reframe how people talk about themselves and how they see themselves after being kind of pushed through this system. Because again, you're in the system and you're getting the service because you have a disability, so you're forced to talk about your disability, you're forced to focus on that, and not anymore. The other things, Social Security and Medicaid, we'll talk briefly about that at the end too, and that of course is a big deal because that's a safety net for many, many families, and many families worked hard to get on those benefits, and then to have any idea that those are going to go away is a little too much to fathom. But Social Security is not in the business of casting people into the streets, and the whole role of that is to be a safety net. And there are some things in place, so we'll talk about those at the end. And that save benefits, and that also allow people to earn more money and maintain their benefits to a certain level. So we'll talk about that too. And the other problem with this is that there's no single source of funding or resources that can address all needs. And oftentimes we try to compartmentalize people. You're going to go to the Department of Rehab for your work services. And I see families like that's not all there is to life. What else? How can we? So one of the things we need to look at is how do we braid services from the division and from VR to create kind of this comprehensive wraparound work and non-work supports so that people can have a wonderful life and work. So that's something that we're trying to do here. And Arizona's system is here to help. There's many different agencies. We're really working hard here to kind of tie these together and to really create that kind of comprehensive network of supports so that any need can be taken care of.
Sarah, could you explain where you work TransCen? What kind of agency, or how would you describe that?
It is, TransCen was a research and policy advising think tank organization that was a nonprofit that was created it's in Rockville, Maryland, so in Washington, D.C. And so we were doing a lot of federal policy advising and some other stuff. And when I came on I worked there for 25 years now, good Lord. And when I came on, we were doing policy advising and we were also doing technical assistance and training, and they were making me do these trainings with these really old pictures and things, and I was like, these stories are so dated and so old, and I said, we must have something more current, right? And they said, no, that was from our project. We haven't done any real direct service in a while, so we don't have any new. And I was like, how can we walk around the country and talk about things that we're not even doing? And so I opened my mouth and I said, this is wrong. We should be doing we should be applying best practice, we should be developing strategies and tools and test driving this stuff and seeing what works and what doesn't, and so that we can talk more knowledgeably. And of course, what did they say? They said, "Go, oh yeah, that's a good idea." So they said, "Go start a program." So that's what we did. So there's a program called WorkLink in San Francisco. We also have a program called CEO in Milwaukee, and then there's a summer we're doing more of a transition age youth program in Maryland. So we have direct service now. And this is what informs our trainings and our technical assistance, and also allows us to really put forward some tools and develop things that and field test them, so that we can actually give them to people and say, this works and do this, and believe it. So again, so Arizona has lots of things going on. Their transition services are really striving to make things more work-related, work-oriented. Their project search programs are sprouting. What is it, 3 in Phoenix, 1 in Tucson, 2 in Tucson? So they're and spreading. So these are things that people should take advantage of. There's also DES with their division and VR services. These are all things that you want to familiarize yourself with and make sure you understand. And if you don't, find someone who can explain it to you in layman's terms. So where do we start with community integrated employment? We start by reframing. So how many of you...
You start by what?
Reframing.
Reframing.
Starting by reframing. How many of you have ever seen a job ad like this? Company looking for an individual with developmental disabilities, autism, history of aggressive behaviors, extensive history of hospitalization, preferred, drug problems, poor social skills, delusional behaviors, okay, supportive coworkers, call for an application. You never see a job like this, do you? Never. But yet again, this is how, unfortunately, the system perceives people with disabilities. This is what they look at. Well, it's a person with autism, it's a person with, and you talk to social workers, you talk to people, and they talk about what's broken, they talk about what's wrong, the deficits that need to be fixed, and they view people by these labels. And what happens is people start seeing themselves as these labels, and they start talking to themselves using these labels, and we need to get away from that. So we need to start by really reframing how we see job seekers, how we see your sons and daughters, and how we look for jobs. So we really want to start focusing on skills, not deficits. That's what we like to say. We also say we like to see the glass half full.
Yes.
Never half empty.
And refillable.
And refillable. Oh, I like that. I'm going to add that. We see disability as human variance. We're all disabled in some way, shape, or form. And let's admit it. So what does that look like when we're reframing? One of the things I included in your packet was this lovely little strengths versus deficits sheet. And I was working with a school group, and they were talking about their students, and it was special ed teachers, and they were talking about their students in these deficit types of ways. He's got a short attention span, he's got ADHD, he's got CP, he's got developmental disabilities, and I said to them, how do you ever expect to get a job for someone if this is what you talk about? Because nobody is looking for that. You don't see ads like this, so let's stop talking about that stuff. We have to start talking about what's right about this person. And let's refocus. So glass half full. So I said, instead of a short attention span, I think the person has many interests. And the teacher said, maybe. And I said, so irresponsible. You said he's irresponsible. I think he's kind of carefree. Glass half full. I think he's kind of carefree. And they started kind of understanding, and they started laughing about it. So we took all of the things. I went and looked at their IEPs, believe it or not, and pulled these words from their IEPs and from their case notes and reports and put them on here. And I said, I want you all to help me here. And let's look at this instead of the glass half empty. Let's just dial it back and say the glass is half full. Because we can all, I could tell people that, I'm irresponsible. I am. But no one ever says that about me. They sometimes say I'm carefree. So we looked at hyperactive, and I said, dial it back. One step back, what is it? You're energetic. So let's just call the kid energetic. And where does that get us? It gets us someplace. If he's hyperactive, it boxes us into a corner, right? There aren't jobs for people who are hyperactive, but there are jobs for people who are energetic. So let's start looking at it that way. So unpredictable. So that, to me, says flexible. You're very flexible. How about impulsive? I left that blank. Someone's impulsive. What do you think? Spontaneous. Right, dial it back. Spontaneous. So someone's impulsive, they're a little spontaneous.
That is good.
How about loud? Someone who's loud.
Enthusiastic.
Enthusiastic, right? Passionate, enthusiastic. Stubborn. The kid's stubborn. Doesn't do anything I say. Stubborn. He's determined and persistent. Poor planner. Put down present-oriented. Someone who's disorganized. Maybe a little unstructured. How about willful? They came up with determined. How about bossy? Someone who's bossy. Dial it back.
A leader?
A leader. Right, leaders. Leadership, there's jobs for leaders, right? Argumentative. In order to be argumentative, you have to be committed. You have to be passionate. Kid tests the limits. He's always testing me. He's always testing the limits. I said, well, what about a risk taker? Someone who, they're the ones, bungee jumping or jumping out of airplanes or scuba diving, right? Manipulative. They have cunning, negotiator, diplomatic.
Negotiator is good.
Yeah, there's jobs for those people.
That's my grandson.
Anxious. The kid's anxious. I left that one blank.
The go-getter.
If someone's anxious, they're a little, dial it back. They're a little hesitant, they're a little cautious is what they came up with. So someone who's cautious. Impatient. They want it done now. They're eager, right? Explosive. And an explosive personality. Dial it back? Just dial it back a little bit. What is explosive?
Enthusiastic.
Enthusiastic. All right? Someone disobedient. They have nonconformist, renegade, rebel. Defiant. Someone who's defiant. They had opinionated and bold. Angry. They had activist. In order to be angry about something, you have to be passionate about it, right? Obnoxious. They had driven and tenacious. Lazy and unmotivated. That's me.
I dial.
Yeah, relaxed, laid back, right? Erratic. Someone who's erratic. They had, on their own plane, they're self-starter. Spacey. They had imaginative and creative. Obsessive. Someone who's obsessive. What they said was focused, detail-oriented. And then the last one was aggressive. Strong-willed, physical, macho. There were lots of things. So if you look at this page, if you really look at this side, this deficit side, goes back to this. You don't see jobs for people who are bossy, argumentative, testing the limits. But you do see jobs for people who are leaders, who are risk takers. So what we need to do is we need to use this language. We need to dial it in, dial it back, and really reframe and start looking at skills, not deficits. And if you take just a half step back and you start talking about someone as a risk taker, or you start talking about someone with leadership qualities, and they start seeing themselves as that, it's a whole different ballgame. And you can get someplace, you can find a job for these people. You can't find a job for, you can't find a job for these folks. And it boxes you into a corner. So we have to start reframing how we see our sons and daughters, when we see our job seekers. So how does this work in real life? This is Stephen. This is what his file said. Early underlying syndrome, poor communication skills, stutters, emotionally immature, gastroesophageal reflux disorder, resistant and belligerent was in his file. Chronically late, always calls in sick, very timid, very scared, limited academics, 3rd grade math, 1st grade reading comprehension. Where do you go with this? You're boxed into the corner, right? So we said, all right, we need to discover who Stephen is. So what did we discover? He's incredibly adventuresome. He loves maps. He loves finding places. He loves using a GPS. Always follows the rules. Always follows the rules. He's just German to a core. Won't cross a street except when the lights, and just really follows the rules. The other thing that we found out about him is he collects patches. He collects first responders, so fire departments, police departments, emergency personnel. He loves patches and their uniforms and muni drivers, the bus drivers, all of that stuff. So he's got this 350 odd patch collection at his house, and they're all meticulously in these little envelopes, these little plastic bags, and they're alphabetized. So just completely, and it's his hobby. He rides a bike. Who knew? Didn't say anything in his file about bike riding. He's a hard worker when he's motivated. So when you set him at a task that he wants to do, he will work hard. Never late for things he likes. He can email his friends. He can look things up on the internet. And he loves disasters. Absolutely loves the bigger the disaster, the better. So, the fires in the Berkeley Hills, that was a good one. The floods this week were a nice one for him. He monitors a police scanner. So we said, okay, let's look for a job for Stephen. Let's look for this job for Stephen. What kinds of things would that be? So he loves gear, is what we said. He loves his police scanner. He loves computers. He loves anything that has to do with gear. He likes organizing things. He likes processing things. The other thing we said is, it has to have something to do with police, first responders, those type of folks, or disasters. So what does that mean? So we then started looking at where do these things collide? And where can we find something where, he's doing things a skill that he has, either working with computer, gear or a machine or something like that, or he's organizing and processing things. We saw with his patch collection, he certainly could do that. And then, it's got to be something connected with police. What does that say to you?
Look at police department.
Police department, right? So that's what we started first. Let's go look. Or EMT. Someone said, what about an EMT? Restocking ambulances. So we went and looked at that too. That was one of the first things we did. What else kind of brings to mind? We love these Venn diagrams.
A store that sells uniforms or...
You cheater.
I did not.
So we were doing the, Googling around with the, first responder, blah, 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 and up pops Skulls. And it's in San Francisco, and it is literally the uniform store for the police, the muni bus drivers, the fire department. They sell all the gear. You have to have a purchase order to get a taser, but they do have them. They have all like the riot gear, the swords, the batons, and the riot shields and the helmets and everything else. So here he is with his flak jacket. He's organizing, pricing, helping to put orders together for the police department, and he loves it. So why is Stephen so successful? One, we found a job that matched not only Stephen's skills, but also his interests and his personality. The fact that he's in there with, and police officers are coming in there to get outfitted. He called in one day and we were like, he's like, after a while he was really scared. The first couple days he was very, very scared to go to work, of course, because it's new and it's different. And he was trying to call in sick, and we said, well, what are the policemen going to do? You're not going to be there. What they're going to have to, and he's like, I'm coming in. Okay, I'll come in. Because he knew that they were, he had to be responsible, and he's on it. So the job developer found an employment setting and a position that utilized his skills and minimized his disabilities. Suddenly he was motivated. Suddenly all of that fear factor kind of evaporated. We knew the things that he could do, so we were able to go in and we said to them, we went into Galls and we said, we've got this young man. He doesn't have the, if he could, what he would be doing is going to be a police officer and going through that training and being a police officer, but he doesn't have the academic and physical capability to do that. So we're looking for something next best thing to get him started. And they were kind of intrigued. And we talked about the patch collection and that he loves uniforms, and that's what they do. They have a whole sewing section in the back that puts patches and everything on the uniforms. So they make the uniforms there as well. And we're like, this is what he's all about. And they thought that was rather intriguing. And then we said, he loves to organize things. He loves to straighten things. And we're looking for kind of a back of the house position for him so that he can do, something in the warehouse. And if maybe 2-3 times a week, having him come in for a couple hours. And the woman who we were talking to said, have you seen our warehouse? And I was like, no. And she said, it needs about 10 hours. Would he work 10 hours? And she was totally bought in. And she said, we could really use that. And so he was able to solve a problem for her. She didn't have to pull a salesperson off the floor. She could hire him at minimum wage to work in the back and take care of this small need. And he was able to put a toe in the water, start very slowly, 3 days a week. He's now up to 4. So as they got to know more and more what Stephen could do, his job responsibilities are increasing, and his comfort with being there is increasing. So he's slowly gaining skills, slowly gaining knowledge. Stephen has the skills and attributes and solved an employer's problem, and he's motivated to do the job and passionate about the business. And any employer you go to will tell you that's what they're looking for. They want someone who's really passionate about what they do and is passionate about what's going on there. How many of you have ever worked with someone who's not passionate about what they're doing? Isn't that fun? So yeah, and it's so true. I mean, it really makes or breaks something. So employers want people who want to be there. And the fact that Jeevy's crying because it's the 4th of July and she was the only one, shows that, and again, it was all about, again, she elevated in that manager's viewpoint. She walked on water after that. So skills, not deficits. You got to believe. You got to reframe your perceptions of your son or daughter. Forget the disability. It's not going to get you anywhere. So we have to look at what the skills are, where that person's going to sparkle. You have to start seeing yourself as a worker. Start expecting that. Setting expectations at home. Setting chores early, young. One of the things that we constantly tell parents is get a whiteboard. If your son or daughter, well, I'm not home when they get home, we said get a whiteboard, you write on there, unload the dishwasher, take the garbage out, walk the dog, whatever it is. And then you can get on the computer or watch TV. And then have little check boxes so that they can decide which one you want to do first, but they all have to be done before you can go to the computer. And it's really kind of funny because one of the parents was like, oh, they still won't do it. And I said, well, you go home and you say, well, it's on the whiteboard. And so they did that. They went home and said, your board's not checked off. And if they told their son or their daughter, in this case, to do this, she would be like, I'm not doing it. And I said, well, all you have to do is say it's on the board. It's on the board. So that's what they started doing. Well, it's on the board. And she's like, oh. and she would go do it, because it wasn't them telling her, of course. So, and it's a great way to kind of take that dynamic out of the equation, and it's a way for them to self-direct. So we love whiteboards. Okay, so pathways to employment really starts with that discovery process. So with discovery, it's not a question of if a person can work, but where. Where should they work? So we use this other little piece of paper that I gave you. This is a positive personal profile. We love this tool. This is really a way to reframe how people see, where a person sparkles. It's what a person's values are. It's what their interests are. It's what their skills are. It's what's unique about them, their unique characteristics. It's not about prerequisites. It's really looking at what are their current skills. And when we have this information, this is the keys to the kingdom. When we have this filled out, we can find a job for someone. So this is what I like to give families. I like them to take this in. I like them to fill it out. What you know. You people know your sons or daughters best. You've lived with them all their lives. You know them inside and out. So this is the kind of information job developers need to place somebody in a job.
Is it the positive personal profile?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, guys, it looks different from your page to this one, and I just can't.
Oh, mine's got a little
Yeah.
TransCen emblem on the top. Yeah, I think they're the same.
Okay. I've, as a mom, just gone out to businesses and, his epilepsy, they say they're afraid he's gonna get hurt, so they don't want to have anything to do with it. Or they say, we need insurance, or, I'm shut down right away because of that. So,
Does he have seizures every day?
no, they range from 10 to 20 to 30, it just depends. Right now he's doing all right, but.
Well, I
don't
mean,
know if you've ever placed
you
someone
have to
with
steer clear of
epilepsy.
things that are gonna be dangerous, so, you don't want them working next to electrical lines or water, things like that. But, a lot of people have epilepsy, and they never disclose it, or if it doesn't, it's something that, you don't necessarily have to disclose.
Yeah, he does, when he's in the interview, just because he wants to tell him about himself,
Well, we gotta give
So,
them better things to
yeah.
talk about. These are the things.
Right, he needs to be right.
Yeah, reframes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, and it is, if it's, obviously, it's certainly something to consider. And it's something to make them aware of, but it's not something you lead with.
Of course, right,
So-
so we just shut down right away, we just haven't gotten, yeah. I was just wondering if you had any insights or if you've ever placed someone with epilepsy.
Yeah, we work very routinely. And we have, there's 6 people with epilepsy in the program at this point. And, it is something that we do disclose to their employers so that they know what it looks like, and we also kind of give them a little training on what to do, and also their coworkers that they work closely with. But the way that you approach it, and the way that you are open about it, it relieves people's tension about it. They're like, oh, so this is no big deal. No, it's not. It's not a big deal.
Right.
It's the unknown that many people don't have the experience with disability, so it's what they don't know is scary to them. So we're very upfront, and we just kind of get permission to kind of talk about their disability, and we talk about it in layman's terms. We talk about not what it looks like. We talk about how to deal with it, and as long as there's a plan. What we find is that employers are like, oh, that's cool. Because, as long as there's a plan, we've had people, we've had people with foot fetishes, we've got people with all sorts of crazy things. And I've always been like, oh my God, how am I going to talk to that employer about the fact that this guy's got a foot fetish and he's going to tell people to take their shoes off and, these behavioral issues or whatever. And it was kind of funny because I went up to one employer and I'm like, so, we're going to start fading back a little bit. And, and I kind of brought it up and she said, I've had to tell people they smell bad, I've had to tell people they were alcoholics, I've had to tell, she goes, this is easy. You know, and I was just like, you know, and it's just, you know, this is easy, because there's a plan. So I think if you go in very upfront, this is it, no big deal, and employers will take your lead on that.
You need to jump in a shoe store.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's his boss actually, a little while later, called me, and, you know, we had faded way back, and I was only going in like once a week or whatever, and she called at one point and she said, hey, Sarah, and I'm like, hey, Shelly, what's up? And she said, you'll never guess who's in my office. And I was like, oh. And she said, it's the shoe store manager for DSW on the way to work. And I was just like, oh. So I'm on my way. And of course, he had been stopping in and giving women nylons and saying, put these on, and watching women try on shoes and some other stuff, so we had to correct that. But his boss was, you know, well informed and knew that all she had to do was pick up the phone, and we were there, clean up on aisle 4, we used to call it. But as long as you have, you know, as long as you react and as long as you're there to support, it's you know, they're like she said, I've had to tell people are alcoholics, I've had to tell people that, you know, this is the least of their worries. In fact, we've had people say that many times, they're the least of my worries. So again, this positive personal profile, what's in that? We start with what are people's dreams, what are their goals, we look at what their interests are, their skills, what makes them unique, what makes them, you know, and sometimes quirks, personality quirks or traits can be an asset in the right spot. We had one young man who, we were having a meeting, a job development meeting, and we were doing those Venn diagrams, and we invite everyone who knows the person well, and everybody's there brainstorming and throwing out ideas, and they brought the neighbor, this older gentleman who was the neighbor who had known him since he was born, and this young man was nonverbal and had trouble kind of speaking for himself, so we wanted everybody in the room who knew him well, who could speak for him. So it was his family, his brother, the neighbor, and the neighbor spits out, we're kind of getting to personality traits, and I'm like, quirks, whatever it is, and he said, he's a nitpicker. And I was like, you know, can you say that? And his mother's like, oh yeah, he's a nitpicker. You know, and she said, you get a piece of dog hair, you get, you know, he's got to make it right. Everything's got to be right. You know, it's got to, you just can't stand anything out of place. And we started talking about, well, where is nitpicking going to be useful? Who's going to find that useful? And his brother was in the room, and his brother said, you know, I know. And we're like, what is it? And he said, you know, my buddies and I, we go every Thursday night, we go to the golfing range and shoot buckets of balls after work. We go and shoot 2 or 3 buckets, we smoke cigars and drink beer at this driving range right next to the house. And he said, you know, we've been doing it for years. And he said last week there was a guy out there who was walking around picking up balls. He said the guy drives this machine around and picks up the ones, but of course the ones in the water trap, and he said, and then along the fence, they can't get close to the fence, so he had to go out there, and he said, he puts on this big mattress and this big head thing, and he goes out and he's like, and he said, that's the job for my brother. And we said, it is. And we said, can you talk to the, you know, do you know the manager? And he said, oh, he said, hell yeah, you know, we've been going for years. He said, I put his kid through school. Yes, I know him, you know. So I said, what's his name? Can I drop your name? And so we went in and actually dropped his name and said, you know, do you want someone to come just, you know, 2 hours to clean up around the edges? And then he's like, oh yeah, that would be great, because we never came, you know, everybody likes to drive the machine, but nobody likes to go out there and do the handwork to pick it up. So that was what his job was. And it was the neighbor and the brother that kind of came together and kind of formulated this little plan, and it worked into a job for us. And another person that I was working with in Tennessee, I walked in and I was, of course, like, you know, tell me about, I can't remember the kid's name, John or whatever, and they all smirked and laughed, and I was like, oh, you know, getting a little nervous, like, oh dear, you know, toilets. He likes toilets. And I'm like, toilets? And they're like, yes, toilets. And of course, he walks in, I've never met him, he walks in and I say, hi, John, I'm Sarah, and he said, what kind of toilet do you have?
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, white? And he said, no, is it a Kohler? Is it American Standard? And he starts like quizzing me, and he knew everything about toilets. He knew how the water worked, he knew how the gizmos, he knew all the thread counts on the bolts to hold it in the, and he did everything he knew. And they were like trying to suppress this, and I'm like, no. That is knowledge. Who would use that? And one of the women at the table was like, I just redid my bathroom and I know who. And she said there's a design center, an expo design center that is miles and miles of bathrooms. Because his mom was like, because we were like, toilets, okay. And his mom's like, no used toilets. That's all I'm saying. No used toilets. Because he was very fastidious. Because we were like, what about plumbing? She's like, and we're like, what about janitorial? Like not a janitor. He is not a janitor. And so we were like, okay, he's not a janitor. So we were like, okay, where are unused toilets? And the woman then came up with this design center. And lo and behold, it was Disneyland for this kid. He walked in there, he was just like vignette after vignette after vignette after vignette. And he was just like, like he had died and gone to heaven. So he, and there was a wall of brochures of the newest Kohler products, and he was just beside himself. It was like, somebody had created a library for him, and we got him a job. He was putting away samples. So they had tile samples, they had paint chip samples, they had flooring samples, and they would put these all together and they would kind of talk to people who were reviewing it, and they'd give them a whole bunch of stuff, and they'd go home with these samples, and then they'd come back with them, and they'd just dump them in a bucket. So his job was to go through this bucket and put these samples back in their binders, and put them back so they could find them again. And that was his job, and that's what he started with. And then we got him promoted into actually putting new rate sheets in the binders. And if he did a really good job, they would actually let him take some of the brochures home, and he would go home and like read Kohler brochures, and he would get to take home the Kohler binder on a few occasions, but he'd have to bring it back. And it was an amazing thing. So quirks can be a real asset in certain spots. So it's not something to hide. It's not something to bury. If it is a unique and utter talent, then we should use it. So one of the things I want you to do is I want you to take this home and I want you to profile yourself. Go home and try this on yourself before you try it on your kid. Try it on yourself. And then look at, your job and what you're doing. And you may find out that you're in the wrong job, so it's a little dangerous. Yeah, be careful. But it also will show you, how you have gone, most of us have gone through a career. I started out frying chicken, hated it. I don't fry chicken anymore. And I got myself into this position where I'm working, helping people and training and doing all sorts of teaching and other things that were really important to me. And so, how do we get to where we are? And that's what we need for our kids, is to really, utilize their skills and make sure that, we're helping them to learn about themselves, and to make choices and direct their own career, because that's what we all should have, right? So look at your career path. Why did you leave jobs? Why did you take other ones? And I think if you look at this, you'll find that there was a reason. I'm good at this, I'm not good at that. And you start finding that out. So that's what we need to find out about sons or daughters.
You only had 2 jobs your whole life. You only had 2 jobs.
You landed in the right one.
It was mostly military or working for a sheriff. 2 jobs I had on mine.
Yeah. Well, some of us get lucky and find the job that we really care about right away. Me, I had to fry chicken first. So exposure precedes interest. The other thing that we see is interest precedes motivation. So often if you go to your son or daughter and say, do you want to work there? And be like, 1, scared. 2, tried that, hated it. They were placed in a janitorial job, or they were placed in something that they didn't like. And for them, that's what work means. So we need to really look at, are we asking the right question? And let's stop asking that work question and just say, do you like money? Because most of them would say yes to that. Do you like being a helper? Yeah, I like helping people. You know, what do you like? So really, and then taking them out and exposing them to things and really showing them that there's a variety of jobs so that they don't think that they have to work at Safeway bagging groceries and that, you know, if they can't do that, they can't work. So really looking at, you know, helping them to find stuff. The other thing that we look at is really repurposing day services so that they're braided and that we can build that wraparound support. So if people are only working 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day, that we can fill the other aspects of their day with non-work stuff. They can go to the gym, they can take classes. We can make sure that they don't lose contact with their friends. So it's a really great way to kind of build kind of this wraparound support network and really focus on both work and non-work stuff. And this is something a lot of states are looking at. This, how do we make sure that, because now when people go to site-based services, that's where they see their friends. So if you're taking them out of there, they're not going to see their friends because their friends are there and they're not there anymore. So we have to come up with a way that they can see their friends in the world. So that's what we do, is we teach them to do things out in the world. The other thing that we look at is really exploring and strengthening employability through volunteering. So we take people out and we volunteer at a number of different things. We had one young man who came in and said he wanted to work in a garden center. And we realized after we put him in the job, because of course the garden center, that's easy. We went out and got that job in 5 minutes. And we put him in this job, and 15 minutes into the first day, the job coach called and said, Sarah, this isn't gonna work. And we hadn't done our homework. We had not done any of this. We had not done this. He was so sure he wanted to work in a garden center. We just took him out and put him in this job. Lo and behold, he doesn't like dirt. And we were, you know, we had mud on our face. At that point, we had mud on our face because we had gone in and sold this employer, oh, he loves gardening, he loves this. And he got dirt on his hands and was like, oh, and got dirt on his clothes and he was like, oh. And so he was washing his hands and just, you know, and the job coach said when he found out what manure was, there wasn't a chance he was going to pick it up. So we had really done a disservice to him. We had done a disservice to the employer. So one of the things that we had to really look at is, you know, now when someone comes in and says to us, I want to work at a garden center, we're like, let's go try that out. Let's go look. What does that mean? It means, in Arizona, it means it's really hot. You're outside, you know, and it's dirty. And there's this stuff called manure. So, you know, we go out and we actually show them. So again, it's all about kind of identifying interests and values and really, you know, is this, you said you like this, do you really? Lots of people say they love working with animals or computers, and what we find is they like watching YouTube videos and they like looking at cats, but they don't want to do the litter box or touch them or anything else. So what we do is we figure out what level is this? Is this a hobby, an interest, passion, and try to figure out what's important to them. And we look at all these things from values. So it could be cultural. You know, I value my heritage. We have the one young man who is his family's from Mexico. He really identifies with being Hispanic. So with him, it was very important, and that was something that went into his Venn diagrams and his bubbles, to find something that matched that. We had another young man who was very patriotic, whose family, his dad was in the Marine Corps and his brother was in the Marine Corps, and you know, it was the family business. So he was really intent on, you know, it had to be something that had to do with the military service. So, you know, what does that look like? So what are people's passions? What are what are their values? And again, remember, exposure precedes interest. So it's all about exploring, verifying skills. The other thing we teach is soft skills. So we go out and we teach at volunteer sites. We teach it's not about bag and rice. It's about learning manners. It's professionalism, teamwork, leadership skills, problem-solving skills. All of those things we work on. And we also work on community safety, because that's a big concern. So stranger danger. What do you do when you get lost? Who do you call? How do you get unlost? And we work with them. We take them out and we literally get them lost. Because we travel train them first. We don't just take them out and get them lost for the fun of it. But we'll travel train them and we'll get them really oriented. And when we think they're really good, and they think they're really good, and they're getting kind of cocky, then we start screwing things up. So we start taking them and making them miss their stop, or we start taking them up the wrong BART exit, and we say, you know, like, oh my God, we're in Oakland, now what do we do? And they have to figure their way home. They have to figure their way, how do I get home? And if I can't figure it out, who do I talk to? Who is a safe person to talk to? How do I get WorkLink on the phone? And we'll send out the cavalry, and we do. So we teach them all of this stuff, and we also put GPS on their phone, and we say, you know, you can call your mom, but you should call us first because we're going to come get you. Your mom's not going to come get you. You know, and we work with them on that so that they know that we're out there. We also do disaster training. So if there was a major earthquake, what does that look like? Who's the Red Cross? How do you go up to someone with a Red Cross jacket and say, would you please put me on your list and call my parents? Just all of these things that you have to kind of think about if you're going to be out in the world independently. You know, we want them to understand, and also fire safety, all of that stuff. But using cell phones, all of that, very, very critical. Stranger danger. How do you protect your cell phone? How do you protect your purse? You know, do you believe people who are, you know, and we say, you know, don't trust anyone. And we teach them bus face. That's the other thing we teach them. So they sit on the bus and we don't make eye contact. Crazier they are, don't make eye contact. You know, and if it scares you, you go where? Up by the driver. Right. You sit up by the driver. So, or you go tell the driver. So, you know, we teach them who's the safe person, who's going to help you, and teach them to do that. So we call that Let's Get Lost. And it's all about navigating. It's all about, you know, stranger danger and all that stuff. So when you're looking for, you know, what to look for in a community service, you do not want to settle for a slot that's open. Really look at, you know, what's going to fit your son or daughter, and keep that in mind. Don't just go for we can offer you this. You should push back and say, can you offer me that? This is what we're really looking for. You should also look at community-based versus site-based services, because community-based is the world. And it's inclusion. And it's all those things that are really, really key. And people want normalcy. They want to be an adult. They want to be a regular person. They don't want to be a person with a disability. And we find that again and again. So really helping them to get into community-based services versus site-based or segregated services is really important. Because then they're going to develop the confidence to be in the world, because they're going to get trained on that. Again, let's get lost. We're taking them out there, we're really teaching them how to be in the world. And we're not just dump and run. It's not a dump and run. We work with them very intently. They go out in small groups, and as they get better and better, we fade back. Then we start to do individualized services, and they start to fade that support. So it's very, very strategic, and it's very supported. Are the goals and activities individualized to some degree? Do they start with who your son or daughter is? Do they take that into consideration? Or do they say to you, these are the two things we can offer? They can take this janitorial training, or they can take this production facility work and do that. And if those are the only two options and your son or daughter is not interested in that, you should look elsewhere. Discuss your son or daughter's goals and ask them how they would support him or her to achieve these. Do the schedules and activities really reflect meaningful activities and foster independence in community settings? The other thing that we encourage parents to do is to ask for other parents as references, so that you can talk to your peers, and you can talk to someone who's in that service at that time and see how they feel about it.
It's hard to talk to other parents that have kids with some difficulties. Throughout my grandson's school years, I tried to get together with other parents to see how they navigated, how they would do it, how maybe they could have play dates or, you know, help each other out. And nobody never wanted to talk to anybody.
Yeah,
I went to some parent meetings also, and I was the only one that was there until the first time was 3 or 4 parents. And in the end, it was just me, so they just stopped giving the classes or the meetings.
Well, you know, the thing that you really want to look at, it has to be useful.
So what
I think really starting with your son or daughter and who are their friends?
he's never had any friends.
Well, who does
Just
is there anyone kind of classmate that he gravitates towards and focusing on just making that partnership and that friendship?
Well, I tried to do that, and they just, like I said, the parents would not cooperate. They did not want to talk to anybody.
Yeah,
They
well,
just like,
there's, you know, and again, there are some
And in
families.
our community, in my neighborhood, there was no other kids that you could get together with, and cousins all far away, and so it was just basically this little kid with two old people. And I tried as much as I could when he was little, taking him different places, to the park, to see other people doing things. But and now he's gotten older, and he just doesn't want to do it. I'm getting more decrepit, cannot walk around as much or do as many things.
Right.
And I'm too old for him, he's a teenager now.
Yeah, well, and it's important to find, you know, where do other teenagers hang out? Where, you know, or volunteering, finding a volunteer job, you know, at the SPCA or, you know, doing something like that, so that he can develop.
All he wants to do is play games on his computer or phone.
Well, that's what he's safe doing, and you have to kind of break out of that and say, you're older, it's time, you know, but we try to get them with their peers, or get them with kind of a best buddy, or get them hooked up with someone at his age who can do things with him and then kind of explore and do things, because it's really critical. It's getting late, so I should probably.
Yeah.
So this is Simon. This is a young man who came into our program, and he's now working at a law firm. This was his pathway to success. So we started small steps. He was someone who came into our program. He has autism, and he would jump and flap and verbalize things and kind of do this echolalic kind of thing. And when we got him from the school district, we had no idea what he could do or what he was capable of. We asked his teacher, and his teacher was like, well, you know, we took him to Lowe's once a week for an hour, and he swept with a broom. And we were like, okay, that's it. You know, and you know, he didn't, and she said, but I don't think he liked it. So we were like, okay, so that's the end of it? That was the end of it. So we were kind of like lost. We didn't have any idea. So we had to do discovery with him. So we started in volunteer jobs and started punching him through a bunch of different volunteer jobs to see where he kind of lit up and where he smiled or where he was really engaged. And we started to see that he really liked computers. And we were really kind of, you know, we asked his teacher, does he read? She said, I don't know. He's 22 years old, you had him for 4 years, you don't know if he reads, you know, and she said, well, I don't, you know, he does a little, I guess, I don't, you know, he doesn't really say too much, and so we were like, okay, so we have to work on his vocabulary too, because he was from a family from Hong Kong, so the family spoke Cantonese, he learned in English in school, so he was kind of bilingual inside, but he didn't really speak either language, so we were kind of like, okay, we gotta land on something and teach him language and teach him phrases that he can use so that he can communicate. So we started teaching him phrases, and we started working on, you know, hello, how are you, things like that, and how was your weekend. He does this thing, welcome back. So every time I go someplace, I come in and he comes back into the office and he'll buzz in and he'll say, Arizona, welcome back, Sarah, and then he'll buzz out. So he's, at this point, he does have some vocabulary. He's got 2 or 3 word sentences. We put him into Project Search after volunteering because we found that he did have these like kind of train spotter eye mentality, eye for detail. That was just the most amazing thing we had ever seen in our lives. And so we said, well, let's see how far we can take that skill. So we put him in Project Search, and we started him in material management, and he worked in material management, which is the supply area for the hospital. They were taking everything all over the hospital, all 7 floors, SKU numbers, 10-digit SKU numbers, things like that. He had this ability to see those numbers and read those numbers faster than you can even imagine. It just made me dizzy. So we put him in this role, and the manager said, well, I want him, Jayco's coming in, we need the material, we need people to go through and pull expired medicine and expired products. So they put him in this material management situation, and he went into this supply closet or this huge distribution center, and the manager said it's going to take him his entire rotation to go through there because it's big. And we said, okay, so we taught him how to read expired and what that meant, and with the calendar kind of went through very systematically, and he got really good at it, and he understood it. And so we set him loose at this distribution center, and he pulled 8 bags of stuff out, and he did it in a week. And the manager was like, no way. And he said, he goes, and he got kind of mad about it. So he said to the job coach, he goes, I'm looking at that bag, and I'm seeing a catheter in there that is a $1,000 catheter. And he said, there's no way he could have done it this fast. So there must be stuff in that bag that is not expired. He must have, and I can't throw that away. I just can't, I can't throw those 8 bags away and say, so the job coach was like, okay, we'll go through each and every bag and check each and every product in the bag to make sure it's correct. He said, I was coaching him. I swear to God, he was doing an amazing job. And the manager would not believe it. So the coach went through each and every bag, 100% accuracy. So the job coach went back and said, everything in that bag is expired. And he's like, wow. And he said, well, and he got kind of mad, and he said he must have skipped some shelves. He couldn't have gone that fast. He said, Jayco's coming in, if they find one thing on that shelf, we're in trouble. So the job coach was like, all right, I'll go through each. So it took the job coach 4 weeks to go through every shelf and check to make sure nothing left on the shelf that was expired. He went back to Mike and he said, Mike, nothing on the shelf. So Mike said, I'm going to the union. I'm going to ask them to create a position so that we can hire this young man to go through all of the, this distribution center and the 2 upstairs. And he can do that for his job. So, and we were all excited. So we went to the family and we said, oh my God, they want to hire Simon. They're going to hire Simon for this distribution. So we went to Simon and we said, Simon, Mike wants to hire you. You're going to work for Kaiser. And he said, and we what? And we called his mother and we're like, he's saying no. And he's saying Embarcadero 3. It's like downtown, Embarcadero 3, downtown. And we were like, what is Embarcadero? We knew what Embarcadero 3 was. There's 4 high-rise buildings, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're like, he's saying Embarcadero 3. What is in Embarcadero 3? And she said, I have no idea. He's never been in Embarcadero 3. And so we were like, and he kept saying downtown. And then we'd like, do you want to, Mike wants you to work at Kaiser. And he was like, And so we were like, okay. So we went back to Mike and said, you know what? He doesn't want your stinking job. And Mike was like, oh. So Mike wrote him these wonderful letters of reference and has this train spotter eye for detail. And so we went down to Embarcadero 3 because we were like, okay, that's what he's saying. Let's go see what's there. Law firms galore. And we're like, oh, easy. That's all paper-based. It's all number-based. It's all, all sorts of things. So we found as many things as we could that had to do with numbers and a law firm and scanning and uploading documents and all sorts of other things and filing and we went in and we talked to the woman, and I showed her his letters of reference saying that Simon was a filing machine. He had this eye for detail, and I said, you've got paralegals in here who are doing this entry-level clerical work that we can teach this young man, and your paralegals can do legal research and they can work with your customers, and they don't have to do this basic entry-level data entry kinds of stuff. And this guy, as you can see, he's got these letters from Kaiser, and she's like, bring him in. And of course, he's still autistic, and he still kind of jumps and flaps a little bit. But the one thing that they did teach him in Kaiser is if you have a Kaiser badge, you cannot go on the elevator first. So they taught him to hold the elevator door and say, ladies first. So he would hold the elevator door and he'd say, ladies first. And oh, thank you, young man. And they'd all go in, and then he'd follow him in and hit the buttons and stuff. So we go to the interview, and he's nervous, of course, and he's burbling under his breath and kind of, and then there's a little bit of twitching and flapping, and the woman had probably never seen anyone with autism before, and she was, and she was basically getting me out the door saying, well, I'll talk about this at the meeting and we'll discuss this. And I knew this was going kind of sideways. So I said, well, let's go, will you show him how to file or what your filing looks like? He never worked in a law firm, but he's done filing in, in the administrative offices at the hospital. Can you show him? And we walked up and she's, well, we're Walmart lawyers. She rips open a drawer and she's like, so, it's all based on Walmart and there's this. And he pulls the file out and he gives it to her and he says, mistake. And she looks at it and she says, you're right, that's State Farm. Because they're also insurance lawyers for State Farm. So she takes it over and puts it in the State Farm drawer and she kind of sees what we're talking about. And she starts so he can do this and he's done that. And so then she starts talking about his skills and then he bolts in front of us on the way out of the office, grabs the door, holds it open, it says, ladies first. And she looks at him and she looks at me and she says, well, the lawyers around here could certainly learn something from this young man. And she hired him 2 hours a day to do filing 1 hour and to take care of the kitchens and set up the deposition rooms with coffee and stuff like that. So that's how he started. He's now up to 25 hours. He just got pulled to work with, they had a case come back. At Walmart, everyone slips and falls. And some people slip and fall an awful lot. Again and again and again. So they had this one case come back and from appeals, and they had 4 lawyers working on it. And so it was a god-awful mess because there were 4 different lawyers with 4 different boxes of documents, and they needed one set of documents to really take it down. And so the lawyers said, can Simon help us? So he was actually working with the lawyers. He goes so fast with these documents that you would not even believe. And they said, we need this. Zip, zip, zip. And it just blows their minds. So he's working with the lawyers. He helped so much. They moved. They'd been in an office for 27 years. They moved, and he was able to go around and collect these case documents and put these together.
We need to go. Sorry.
Oh, yes, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm getting a little long-winded. Anyway, so he's highly successful. He's just beloved by the organization, and the woman who was second guessing this and is now his biggest supporter and has said to us, this is, she said flat out, I was wrong. I really was hesitant, and she said, and he's one of the best workers we've ever had. So employment success starts with you, so expose your sons or daughters, find age-appropriate interests, set your expectations high, assign daily chores and responsibilities, get those whiteboards out, give choices, build self-advocacy skills, decision-making, teach manners and conversation skills, let your child fail. Many people don't. Use technology and teach your son or daughter to manage their disability, not ignore it. The last piece of this is Social Security in a nutshell. So there's a number of different benefit programs that you should know what your son or daughter is on. There's SSI, SSDI, there's child death benefits, or SSA sometimes they call it. So, and that's if a parent dies while they're on Social Security, then there's disabled sons and daughters can take that disability payment, that SSDI payment. All of these programs are administered differently, and you need to know that. So Title II is what you'll hear SSDI called. SSI is income-based. SSDI is an insurance that you pay into. So as you work, you earn credits and you pay into SSDI. So it's very, very complicated. So if someone tells you something and they don't know, and they don't ask you, are you on SSI or are you on SSDI? You should not listen to whatever they say because they could be giving you the wrong advice. Okay, so it's very important that you talk to someone who does know a lot about benefits, because this is not something you dabble in, and it's not something that you wing, and you need to be trained, and you need to stay current. So there's lots of people out there that can help. In general, what we find is that a person can earn more by working, but if in doubt, you should have an expert look at your situation. Because there are some instances where there's a pension plan connected with the idea that you can get your We have one young man whose dad passed away and worked for FedEx for years and had this wonderful pension. And it's based on his eligibility for SSI. If he doesn't get SSI, he doesn't get that pension. It's a lot of money, so it's a big deal. And he could end up making much, much less if he goes above that breaker point that
That is so weird.
So there are instances where it can be touchy, but in most instances, you can earn more by working. There are also work incentives that you can minimize, that they will, it's kind of a way to erase earned income. So they look at your gross earned income, and these work incentives are small little things that they allow you. Oh, you get to take $80 off for this, or there's a student earned income. So if you're under, I think 26 or going to school, you can qualify that. There's also other things that qualify as work incentives. So that's a way to cut your earnings, and they'll consider that before they kind of tabulate what your earnings are. Okay. There's also what they call easy and automatic reinstatement. So if, for instance, you get a job and you lose that job, if it happens within 3 years, you don't have to reapply. You don't have to go through that whole process again. They automatically kickstart your benefits. So the thing that you need to do is you need to meet with a benefits analyst if you have questions or have significant concerns.
Where do you get a benefits analyst?
They are around. Many of them are free. The independent living services sometimes have. Are there independent living? Yeah, I think there's so there's benefits analysis.
One of those brochures has DB 101, and there's information on that.
That's
About that?
lovely. That's calculators. You can plug
Okay.
things in. We have to go. Yeah.
I put everything away already.
This is
So-
one here.
So if you take a look, you
Okay.
guys have the PowerPoint, and this has, the slides have this information. So Social Security programs, very different. Title II is that SSDI, child death benefits. Supplemental Security Income, SSI, is income-based, and it's very different. So you need to kind of, and on DB 101, it goes through both of these programs and gives you an outline of what those are. So it's very, very good. There's also calculators on there, so you can plug in, if my son gets a job for 20 hours a week, what happens to this? And it'll show you. And it asks you questions so that you can get around to getting some good information. Okay, the other concern that we see is the cash benefits. I'll lose cash benefits. Yes, you will. But what they hope is that the earned income, it's based on what you earn, so that will negate the loss. And in fact, you can earn more because they have this, every $2 you earn, they only take one away. So you end up actually earning more if you work. SSDI and child death benefits, you should look at that because the situation is more complicated, and there's this thing called SGA. So it's how much you can earn. And it's too late, and it's too crazy and complicated to get into, and to think I can teach you this in 5 minutes. So just know that there's assistance out there and people can walk you through this. The other thing that people really are afraid of is the loss of health coverage. And one of the things that you should know is Arizona is what they call a threshold state. So Social Security allows you to earn $36,819 in Arizona before they will take your Medicaid away, your health benefits away. Okay, that's a lot of money. You're usually working full time and have an opportunity to, and that's what they think. That's why they put this in here, is so that you can get a full-time job with benefits before that goes away. At the high end of that, when you start earning $24,000, $25,000, they may say you have to pay in. But usually it's very minimal. It's usually there's a 250% buy-in program, and it's usually a $20 or $50 payment each month. So you could end up in a situation when you're on SSDI that you have to pay in a little bit. But you have to be making quite a bit of money to hit that spot. And at that point, you're working pretty intensely and you're probably verging on full-time, okay? And then there's some other rules here. SSDI Medicare continues for 93 months after your nine trial work period months, and so 93 months, they won't touch it. And what their hope is that you will stabilize, probably be working full-time, and qualify for benefits through your employer, okay? So what if the job doesn't work out, benefits stop? There's this expedited reinstatement clause where, again, you don't have to, SSI, if you're on Social Security income within the first year, you don't have to file. You don't have to go through that long, laborious process to get back on if it happens right away. And your cash payments will just gun up, and so will your Medi-Cal coverage will probably not be gone. SSDI, the trial work periods, your eligibility continues for 3 years, or you don't have to reapply. So it's called expedited reinstatement. What if I need a personal attendant? A lot of times people allow you to use your IHSS, your in-home support services, to cover that. And there are other things too, so if anybody needs that. Okay? There are lots of ways to reduce your earned income. There's Arizona ABLE accounts now where your assets aren't counted. That's something that you may want to look at, and it allows you to go over that $2,000 limit, and it doesn't affect your benefits. So that's something to know. There are some situations where you may not want to do that. You cannot pass that money along. So if your son or daughter were to die, it cannot be inherited. You have to pay back the benefit, is what they say. So there are some situations where ABLE accounts might not be the way you want to go. But in some instances, if you want to save for a house, or you want to do that, that would be a great thing to do, because you can save for that. Or you save for a car or a van, or an accessible van. Pass plans are great for buying cars, tools, education, all sorts of things. It has to be used for a specific purpose, and you have to state that, and then you have to keep it separate. So it's a very structured savings account, is what that is. And SSI work incentives, those are the student earned income exclusion, impairment-related work expenses. So if you physically can't walk to a bus stop, you could take a cab and call that a work expense. And that comes off the top of your earned income. So there's lots of things that you could do to kind of minimize your earnings. Again, what we tell people is report. Never, ever, anything that's earned, any sort of income, please tell Social Security, because otherwise you're going to get hit with that overpayment. And Social Security is very slow. So when you do go to work, there's going to be an overpayment. Just be forewarned. Because you send it in, it takes them a long time to get it in the system, and they keep paying you. So they keep sending you the check, but they're going to come and ask for it back. So what we say to people is put it in a savings account and just don't touch it, because they're going to ask for it back. Okay? No, never spend overpayments, because they're going to ask for it back. Here's the DB101 site, and then there's also the Disability Benefits Center, and the Bridge to Independent Living. They are the people that you can call to actually talk to a benefits counselor. They'll be able to set you up, okay?